All right, good evening, everyone. The meeting of the Committee on Parent and Community Engagement of the Board of School Directors will please come to order. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Director O'Halloran,
Here.
Director Seamson,
Present.
Director Zomber,
Present.
and Chair Leonard.
Present.
That's 4 present. We have a quorum.
The Pledge of Allegiance was recited at the previous meeting, so we do not have to do that again. This meeting is being conducted from the Central Services Building. This meeting is also being broadcast via live stream on the MPS website and on the MPS YouTube stream, the links to which may be found on the MPS website on the broadcast page. Before we begin tonight's meeting, we have a short announcement regarding interpretation services for the Spanish-speaking members of our audience.
Buenas tardes y bienvenidos a la Junta de la Mesa Directiva de las Escuelas Públicas de Milwaukee. Si desea escuchar esta reunión en español, por favor llame al 312-626-6799 e introduzca el número de reunión 832-0725-4267, seguido por el símbolo de número. Luego, introduzca el código 883149, seguido por el símbolo de número. Nuevamente, para escuchar esta reunión en español, llame al 312-626-6799 e introduzca el número de reunión 832-0725-4267, seguido por el símbolo de número. Luego, introduzca el código 883149, seguido por el símbolo de número. Buenas tardes.
For each of our items of business, we will hold a discussion and public hearing. If you wish to speak, please fill out a speaker's slip and bring it to our clerk. Virtual speakers are asked to remain on the platform until you are called upon. After speaking, virtual speakers may follow the rest of the meeting using the broadcast information previously mentioned. When you are called upon to speak, please state your name and spell your last name for the record. For the sake of fairness and to give everyone a chance to speak, the chair reserves the right to limit the length of time allowed to any one speaker. Written testimony will be accepted for transmittal to the board. Send this testimony to the Office of Board Governance, P.O. Box 2181, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53201-2181, or fax to 414-475-8071, or email it to governance@milwaukee.k12.wi.us. Just as a reminder, Robert's Rules of Order dictates that all comments should be directed to the chair of the committee. Also, any questions or requests, including those from the public, committee members, or the administration, are to be directed toward the chair, who will determine the most efficient way to address them. For the safety of all and to ensure the good order of the meeting, harassment or intimidation tactics of any kind will not be tolerated. Anyone who engages such harassing or intimidating words or actions will immediately be asked to cease. If such behavior continues, a recess will be called and the offending parties will be removed from the meeting. Anyone ejected from the meeting may continue to listen to the meeting or access the agenda items online. However, the individual will not be allowed to rejoin the meeting. Also, no one other than the members of the board, designated staff, or those who have been invited to present or participate in items of business will be allowed on the stage before, during, or after meetings of the board and its committees. Finally, for our listening audience, if you wish to access this evening's agenda items and attachments online, you may do so by visiting the meetings, agendas, and minutes page of the MPS website. Let's begin, Madam Secretary. Item number 1, please.
Chair Leonard, item 1 is update with possible action on enhancing educational communities and school climate. This is an informational item, and although it has been noticed for possible action, no action is required.
Would the administration please present the item?
Chair Leonard, members of the committee, Eduardo Galvan, interim superintendent. This evening, we are bringing to you the FY24 end-of-year report on enhancing educational opportunities and school climate. This is a culminating update focused on support programs, interventions, and discipline strategies used when behavior violations occur as outlined in the MPS Code of Conduct. As we continue to look for ways to build our school communities and cultures, this data is reviewed to help guide supports needed across the schools in the district. Tonight, Mr. John Jagman, supported by Mr. Matthew Boswell, will share this update with us. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Mr. Galvan. Chair Leonard and members of the committee, John Jagman, District Discipline Manager. As always, we want to focus and centering ourselves on the 5 priorities for success. And in this work around enhancing school climate, we are ensuring to strengthen communication and collaboration. All of our choices we are making are ensuring fiscal responsibility and transparency. We are focusing on proactive practices and approaches and how we are developing our staff that will ultimately improve district and school climate, which will lead to that increased academic achievement and accountability. This report is looking back in review for the 2023-2024 school year and some of the best practices that we've been conducting throughout the last school year. We had 4 pathways within the school improvement plan. All schools, while creating their 2023-2024 school improvement plan, doing some root cause analysis, determined which pathway they were going to focus on. All pathways were utilized, all strategies were utilized, but each school selected which pathway was going to be their area of focus within their school improvement plan. That may have been positive behavioral interventions and supports, or PBIS, the mental wellness strategies, the mental wellness approach, restorative practices, or anti-racism and anti-bias strategies. At the school level, this was supported through a school teaming process, including the learning team, their PBIS Tier 1 team, their building intervention team, and the student discipline committee team at those middle and high schools. Schools are focusing on proactive practices, approaches, systems, and strategies. What are those proactive implementations that we can get, those systems and strategies that we can get into place to proactively prevent and support student behaviors? We also engage stakeholder voice throughout the year, including students, community, and staff members, and we'll have some of that data here as well. As mentioned, we had those climate pathways. Again, all 4 pathways were utilized throughout the district, but schools, depending on their need and the analysis of their data, they identified which pathway they were going to most focus on. There were a variety of professional developments offered in each of the pathways, some at the district level, some at the school level, based on that need. The PBIS team created a walkthrough rubric. They conducted that at the schools with school leaders and different staff members at the school, looking and seeing what is occurring and where are those gaps and what are those strategies that we need to be implementing. There is also a national research-based tool called the Tiered Fidelity Inventory, or the TFI, that looks at the climate behavioral framework at a school level. All schools completed that. They looked at areas of need, and they created a year-end TFI action plan. Within the mental wellness pathway, focusing on increased fidelity of second step implementation. All K-8 schools are implementing second step as that social emotional learning framework, but again, those schools focusing on that climate pathway were really focusing on their increased fidelity of implementation. There are also various restorative practices cohorts. There are coaching cohorts that have in school at least 20 hours a week coaching in the school. There are also other cohorts that are looking at next steps, starting the PD, and really looking at which direction they want to do restorative practices, eventually hopefully reaching that coaching cohort that is, again, in the school coaching support. All schools also identified a school-based climate equity liaison. That was a position that's in the school, so it may have been a teacher, it may have been an SST, it may have been a support staff, but they also were identifying themselves as that liaison, receiving additional support around courageous conversations about race, receiving additional support around strategies, and they were the liaison to make sure that the school staff members in their building were getting that information and were getting the support on that. As mentioned, we were focusing on stakeholder engagement throughout the year as well. At the end of the year in April, we had our Student Leadership Summit. This was our first back to in-person summit we had since 2019 before COVID. We had 221 students from our middle and high schools at UWM. They were presenting their work from the year. So each of those student discipline committees presented a 5 to 8 minute presentation around what they're working on that year, what their problem of practice was, and what their overall recommendation was to improve culture and climate in their school. Some of the themes that were presented is students were talking about increasing student engagement and motivation, that's school connectedness, and how can we increase that? How can we increase bully awareness, staff and student community building throughout the year, implementation of restorative practices, what procedures in the hallway and passing time students were finding useful, which ones they might recommend to update, and looking at additional student leadership opportunities across the school and across the district. We also had the Black and Latino Male Achievement Mental Health Symposium in April. That was at Marquette University, where a variety of students came there and learned more about mental health awareness and how to gain access and how to notice mental health concerns they may have or others they may know in their family or friends may have, and how to gain that access. And then our Gender and Identity Inclusion Department had Denim Day, also in April. That was at UW Milwaukee, where a variety of girls who are participating in their Girls of Color initiative came to UWM and learned about sexual assault, sexual harassment, and different ways to gain access to that in the community and get supports around that. And that's all connected to the National Denim Day. We also had our annual discipline survey completed by staff members across the district. A variety of questions around what's working in terms of discipline, what questions do they have, what confusion do they have as staff members in the buildings, and what role they have in discipline, and where do they want to see that get improved. 82.7% of staff indicated that they take multiple opportunities a week to build relationships. We really want to look at as that community building, relationship building is the foundation. And we know staff members are engaging in that, but looking at how often. And the majority of staff are saying they are doing that on a weekly basis. And the remaining staff are saying maybe it's every other week, but they are all continuing to engage into that. 70.8% of staff indicated that they agreed or strongly agreed that their school uses data to make informed decisions. So again, we wanted to see if staff members feel and are engaged in data-based decision-making. That is what we want our schools to be doing, looking at their data, making decisions of what's working, what's not working, where are their needs. We also asked them about professional development they would like to see. And some of the most requested professional development includes re-entry, which is when a student has a discipline process. If it's a suspension or if it's not, even if it's just another time where they're stepping out of the classroom due to discipline, how are we re-entering them into the classroom? How are we making sure they feel re-engaged and real connected to that classroom? Continued PD around alternatives to suspension, classroom management, restorative practices, increasing student voice, culturally responsive problem solving, which is a team-based approach, how are teams using that in their team meetings, and looking at microaggressions, how to identify them, how to break them down in the classroom. We are using that as we form professional development for the upcoming year, knowing that these are the PD topics that staff are requesting. We are also continuing with our courageous conversations about race implementation. When we were here in March, we mentioned that we met our first phase 1 goal of having all MPS staff members attend courageous conversations about race the one day, they call it the exploration. We are continuing maintenance of that. When we hire new staff, they are attending that. New Educator Institute is in 2 weeks. All new teachers and new paraprofessionals attend New Educator Institute. Day 2 is courageous conversations about race. So all staff members engage in that as part of their day 2 at NEI. That any staff that are hired outside of that process are continuing to attend that. And we are continuing to offer sessions throughout the year. We also have our District Equity Leadership Team, or DELT, as we've called it here before. We meet monthly. We engage with equity coaches from the vendor, courageous conversations about race. One of the last things we were doing, we were utilizing what they call the ladder of inference and the iceberg model that's part of the systems thinking model, and how we are looking at what is working, what's not working, and going down the iceberg and kind of seeing what's below the water, if you will. And how our ladder of inference, which is how our biases click in, and how can we interrupt that in our minds when we're doing that root cause analysis. We started what we are calling Movie Mondays, which highlighted an anti-racism documentary. Every Monday, we offered for individuals that wanted to log into a Zoom and watch various anti-racism documentaries around teaching culture-responsive practices in schools. There's documentaries around what schools are doing, looking at various aspects of anti-racism in school. We also looked at integration of action planning and continuous school improvement plans. So as we are building these school improvement plans for the upcoming school year, we are doing the Plan, Do, Study, Act model and how we can continually look at implementing courageous conversations about race, not just as a one-time you attend, but we can use these strategies, these protocols, while we do that continuous improvement plan. As we look forward for next steps, we are offering Beyond Diversity seminars in August. We had a 2-day seminar that ended today. Beyond Diversity is kind of like the next step in courageous conversation about race. It is a 2-day in-person seminar. We continue to use those protocols and engage folks in person in small groups and whole groups discussions around those protocols and how race plays out in our lives and in our schools. We are offering additional refreshers and what we're calling kind of advanced seminars. So any department and school can look at having just refreshers of courageous conversations about race. It may not be the whole day seminar, but we're going out to schools offering a refresher on these are what these protocols look like and these are how you can use them. We offer monthly networking opportunities for individuals. It may be a Zoom, it may be meeting at a school, it may be meeting here at Central Services, but just networking and practicing conversations. That is how we build that work going forward. We have our Culture, Climate, and Alternatives to Suspension Toolkit. We've had this for the last 5 or 6 years, working in collaboration with the Office of Administration. Every year we update that. So we have completed that updated. That is out there for any school, any staff member, school leader to use. It has strategies, it has questions to ask, it has tools to use as we are implementing and increasing culture, climate, and then ultimately those alternatives to suspension. This year, we are also looking at what we are calling the 5 components of school climate. These are the 5 best practices that we want to see in place in all settings. So when we talk about what does this look like in a classroom, what does this look like in the cafeteria, we are looking at 5 best practices. And we are aligning that to all of these different approaches. So what do they look like in terms of restorative practices? What do they look like in terms of PBIS, in terms of mental wellness, mindfulness? All these different approaches to school climate, we want to draw back and bring to there are 5 best practices and how we are implementing that. We are also looking at creating a new collaboration this year. We are calling it Teaches, Teaming in Equitable Education, Coaching, and Holistic Support. This is where we're getting all of those kind of boots on the ground, coaches, support staff that are in our buildings, in our schools, supporting teachers. If it's around behavior, if it's around academic, if it's around attendance, we have a variety of supports. And instead of kind of, I coach this, I'm going here, I'm going there, we are bringing those individuals together monthly to talk about schools and talk about what's working in schools, talking about what schools need. So collaboratively, we can go into a building that needs the most support or needs the support. So they don't feel like we're isolating it and we're working in silos. We are creating this collaboration team that will go out together based on need and based on those monthly conversations. So we thank you for your time, and we are now open to any questions you may have.
So I know we have some virtual speakers and some speaker slips, but I'm first going to ask committee members if you want to make any initial comments or questions. Let the speakers go first. Okay, Madam Secretary, I think I would prefer to start with the virtual speakers.
We have 2 virtual speakers. We have Deborah Keither. Please state your name, spell your last name, and begin your testimony.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, Deb Keither, Kuether. I just want to start off by talking about some bright spots. I want to give kudos. The district always changes initiatives, and it really is refreshing to see that the district has stuck with this courageous conversations for an extended period of time, which has equaled to over 9,000 staff being trained. So that is very positive. I was excited to see the student summit back in person, and that there was a good number of students there that were actually actively participating and collaborating. So that was extremely exciting to see. The events that were held with BLMA and the GII were very good to hear about. You need to make sure that you highlight those continued efforts because we do want to hear about those. The reporting is a little more organized the way that it's presented this time, and it shows more than how the previous equity updates were given, like the one back in May. This is the kind of reporting that I would think that people need to see more. Now I'm going to get into the challenges. The last few reports regarding Courageous Conversations kind of seem the same. So it would be better for those of us looking at several of them to kind of encapsulate and quantify what specific work is being done and what is going to happen next. So what do we have to look forward? A little bit more about the big picture thinking. I don't think we've heard anything about how the district is doing in regards to what students are, putting forth in these efforts. So ways to highlight the student input is really important, and we just need to see more of that. It's not popping off the page. It's also hard to tell if these suspension numbers are good or bad, or if they just met the goal or what. It's listed out of context. There's no comparisons to anything else, and it would be very helpful to kind of have a running record of a certain time frame so that we can see the trends across time. There's interesting results about the staff survey. What else? What are the other results? Is the district doing anything as a result of hearing these results? You should pinpoint what.
Thank you, Ms. Keither. Our next speaker is Angela Harris. Please state your name, spell your last name, and begin your testimony.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Angela Harris, Harris. On Thursday, July 25th, Beck MKE submitted a public records request for the monthly discipline disproportionality reports for the months of February through May 2024. It has been 2 weeks, and we have not received receipt of the confirmation of this request. These are the same detailed disproportionality reports that the Equity Coalition has repeatedly asked to be included in the new report now that it has been changed to enhancing educational communities and school climates. As it relates to tonight's presentation, I have the following questions, and because this is the only agenda item, I'm certain the district administration will be ready and willing to answer these questions. The report states that the primary goal of Milwaukee Public Schools is to reduce discipline disproportionality across the district. My first question is, what are the root causes of discipline disproportionality? And what are the inequities that are leading to the discipline outcomes for the students that are affected by the discipline disproportionality? Under the section Climate Pathways within School Improvement Plans, all schools had a variety of activities within their school improvement plans aligned to improve school climate and lower disciplinary disproportionality. How were those activities tracked and examined to determine their effects on discipline disparities? And how are those schools that are seeing success being used to explore best practices across the district? Do the schools identify climate equity liaisons, understand their roles? How are we ensuring strategies regarding addressing discipline disparities are being shared and implemented at the school level? Stakeholder engagement. Outside of the equity community conversation, how have parents and community been given space and opportunity to discuss concerns and potential solutions for discipline disproportionality? Who is at the table when decisions are made about school discipline and our systems? Courageous conversations about race and district equity leadership team. In what ways has the use of courageous conversations about race addressed the root issues that are causing disproportionality in the district? How can we be sure that courageous conversations are working? Next steps. I guess the overall question that needs to be asked is, are the equity practices and strategies that we are putting in place to enhance educational communities and school climate narrowing our discipline disparity? Are we closing gaps? How do you determine the plan is?
Okay. So also, is it possible that we can get back to them, not have more public testimony, but at least we can have it in writing on those questions so that we can take a look at those directly? Okay, first person, Quentin Claybon, please. Hang on, Quentin.
Hello, hello. Great. Hey, thanks everyone. Claybon, K-L-A-B-O-N. Thanks for your time. First preface, thanks to, I think it was Director O'Halloran, for ensuring that this important topic got discussed before the school year begins, after it did not appear in May. Second preface, something that might be helpful so everyone's working with the same facts and parents have information, is maybe this year have school climate data have like year-to-date comparisons for the previous year, just to see where we are on track. So I think you're sharing really, really good news. Milwaukee Public Schools Student Services Department put out end-of-year reports in 2022 and then now in 2024, and their total number of suspension events, like the count, was basically the same. And if those numbers are real, that's amazing. Why is that so amazing? MPS didn't put out a final report in 2023, but the DPI numbers that came out later said that 2023 was higher than 2022, so we're higher. And then I believe it was in March, Mr. Jegman said that suspension numbers were up in 2024, 7%. So that's a high on top of a high. But the numbers look the same as 2022, which is great news, instead of hitting like a horrifying high. So in order to balance out 6 months of a 7% increase, you would need 3 months of a 14% decrease. That's incredible, especially over spring, which, as I understand it, is like the trickiest season for whatever reason. So I found the presentation like way too mellow and way too broad and way too much talking about the rest of the school year. Like the March through June improvement is huge news worth sharing, and then hopefully replicating like this school year in a few weeks. So what did you do? What did you change? How does MPS continue that phenomenal progress through this year? Was it luck? Did good habits that you talked about just like finally break through? Are students just naturally recovering? I saw alternatives like conferences and detentions were up compared to 2 years ago. So is that, like, are those alternatives working? Are there any insights into like certain schools that are really excelling? Usually have like a school here talking about some stuff they've done. And then are staff happy with that decline? Or are the problems just being kept in the classroom and that's, might end up forcing teachers to leave because of bad school culture? So yeah, if the numbers are indeed remarkably better, I hope you can provide real insight on like what switched or what you think switched or what finally broke through, so that the board can hopefully talk about how we can reinforce those for the next year and maybe be down 15% the whole year next year. That'd be great.
Thank you. Next person, Kendall Allen.
Kendall what?
Allen. Thank you.
Hello. My name's Kendall, last name Allen, A-L-L-E-N. All right, I'd like to begin on the MPS website. It states under the vision statement, the family engagement team at Milwaukee Public Schools will create opportunities for district and school staff, community partners, students, and families to meaningfully partner to support our students' academic and lifelong success. We will unapologetically advocate for all students and families and ensure they have the tools and resources to succeed. So I wonder how we, the people, can get the results of how the family engagement team been performing to see if anything needs to be modified to improve the results. Out of the 6 standards of the MPS Family and Community Engagement Framework, according to the website, I want to speak on the community connection part. Strong strategic assessments taken by members from MPS before schools start back for any year is super important to tackling so many issues that happens before class start and after class end. The neighborhoods around the schools that have the serious issues when it comes to student participation, parent participation fights, low test scores, and low graduation rates needs the best strategies to fully tackle the issues I mentioned. MPS can truly have community members' input on the issues kids facing before the kids even walk into a school. That way, schools can truly work towards creating major solutions to those issues so that students have a better chance at graduating. If those type of assessments have been taken already, where can I find them and the results? I believe that 90% of the problem that MPS is facing from troubled students, low test scores, and parents not showing up to parent-teacher conferences is the government fault for under-resourcing in communities and neighborhoods. And I believe 10% of the problems that NPS is facing is NPS fault, because NPS should have already recognized the terrible conditions that the children they teach during school areas come from. NPS is supposed to use their funding to make sure they try to help the students heal enough from the reality that they live in while they are in the school, so that they can graduate and look forward to something in life that's better. NPS is supposed to make sure that the kids have purely great education, great counseling, great security to make sure the staff and the students are safe, great food and nutrition for nutritional purposes, and great leadership and direction to make sure NPS is headed in the right direction for students and parents and taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you, Kendall. Next person, Larry Hoffman.
Good evening, Larry Hoffman, Hoffman. Suspensions all year have shown little or no improvement. And it reminds me that I'm working with several teenagers, young African-American men, who have been suspended and or expelled for fighting at some point. I love working with them, and I see their intelligence and their goodness. Sometimes it seems the only thing going on in their minds is who's going to jump who and how they can get back at those guys and maintain their pride or their cool or something. What resources is the district devoting to understanding conflict among kids, understanding their reasoning, and really helping them to develop the skills to handle their conflicts differently? When I looked over the report for this meeting, seemed to me that it was similar to the report from the June SASE meeting. And so I went back to my notes from that meeting, what I testified, and I'll repeat. The report fails to include evaluation or evidence that the activities listed have had any effect on equity among students in MPS. Where is there any critique of anything the district has done? Its failures to create equitable systems or carry out any action in an equitable manner. Where does it say what we still need to do? And as applies to courageous conversations, where are the results of the evaluation questions that Micah submitted so that faculty members could describe the ways that courageous conversations has influenced their work? Now, I understand from that SASE meeting that there's going to be a meeting in September where, I don't know if it's PACE or SASE, but they'll have some more analysis at that meeting. I think Director O'Halloran, you asked for that, if I'm not mistaken. And if I have a few seconds left, I want to say that I was at the Student Leadership Summit. I think it was okay, but there were themes that you talk about here, but how well were they executed? I observed a group that had too little time to really do their work.
Thank you, Larry. Next speaker, Sierra Brown.
Hello, Director Leonard. My name's Sierra Brown, B-R-O-W-N. Thank you for hosting this meeting. I am at the podium today to implore this committee and the board to respect the documented efficacy of the Courageous Conversations About Race program and renew this contract for the next 5 years. As reported, just going over your notes here, participant takeaways were to center race in Tier 1 and Tier 2 school climate efforts. In order to center race, staff need the tools and language given to them in the program, I believe. And it is your charge as Milwaukee Public Schools that students will feel safe emotionally and physically in school. Should be priority number one. How can you learn if that's not happening, right? So the resolution in 2019 that initiated the adoption of Courageous Conversations says, whereas it is imperative that MPS teachers, staff, and administrators work hard to divest themselves of all racial and ethnic biases, recognize the dangers that our students face, and must believe in our students and have faith in their communities. They must trust them and encourage them and defend them. Later, it says that toxic interactions must be confronted in all of our work. End quote, directly from your reports. So the report on the resolution from 2019, Resolution 1920 R-005. MPS shall annually train current staff and students over a 5-year period in anti-racist and anti-bias practices, along with restorative justice practices. So they are two separate things. You can't do one and say it's doing both. Definitely. And so confusion about the next steps on the report MPS gave today. Short bullet points. You know, are we getting reports that are telling us the plans for the next school district? There hasn't been a concerted commitment to renewing courageous conversations, although it does sound like the district is attempting to continue to adopt them. So this year-end discipline survey, coaching support and professional development collaboration time, that's what teachers need. Courageous Conversations can do that. Looking forward to the teaches. That sounds great. Give us more information, Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. And the next speaker, Mr. Vince Tony.
Vince, first name, last name is Tony, T as in Tom, O-N-E-Y. I've been coming to these meetings probably for the last 5, 6 months. I really haven't been engaged until I heard some data about North Division High School. Less than 20% of the students can read at grade level. And I visited North Division. I was really taken aback by what I witnessed there, and also Keefe Avenue Street School, where a lot of the students there, which are the younger students, which are going to be going to the North Divisions and other schools, are ready. I'm not sure what this program is offering towards learning and teaching our students. I haven't heard very much about student outcomes or anything of that nature and how this program benefits anybody. I think what I'd like to know, since you guys aren't answering questions now, you're going to answer them in the future, is how many people, staff members, are being paid to put this program together? What are the salaries? How many of them are there? And how are taxpayers' money being, we need to know how taxpayers' money are being spent. Is this getting our kids ready for jobs, for employment, for college? What are the outcomes, and how are we trying to get from point A to point B when we got kids that can't read? So I just don't see any value in what's being talked about here in terms of outcomes. There hasn't been any data that's been presented that shows us that these programs are at all successful. Just talking points. There seems to be a lot of talking going on, a lot of meetings going on, but it doesn't seem like there's a lot of outcomes that are being presented to the public. I think that this board and who's ever running this program need to come up with some data that us, the citizens and the families and the community can understand what's going on and how this is benefiting us. I think if it's not benefiting us, then maybe these dollars should be spent elsewhere to get better educational outcomes in the city of Milwaukee. The biggest thing is I just haven't heard anything about our children and about their education. And I've been coming to 5, 6 meetings, and that hasn't been the focus of this board or some of the programming that's been presented to us. So I'd like to see something like that happen and give us some data so we can understand why we are in such turmoil in these schools and our kids can't read or write. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Tony.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, we had 2 other online, and I'd just like to say their names real quick to see if they're on there.
Sure. No, please go ahead.
Angela Lucas Foley, are you online? Nope. And Lucas Ware, are you online? All right, that's everybody. Thank you.
Okay. So do committee members wish to make any comments, ask any questions? Director Simpson, go ahead. Go ahead.
So I guess one of the questions I had is, as our schools are choosing a pathway, how are they measuring how that's working in their school? Is it through the suspension rate at the school level? Is it, looking at the number of times students are sent out of the classroom? How are those pathways that the school has selected being measured?
Chair Leonard, members of the committee, John Jagman. So within their school improvement plan, they have different columns, and one of them is what's their action level, and then what will they see? Like, so what will teachers be doing differently? Like, will they be doing a different scenario? We will see community building, for example. We will see posters on the wall of the expectations, whatever it might be. And then what will we see different from students? Like, what's the outcome there? And it can vary. Some of it is suspensions, which is kind of like the end or the last data point we kind of really want to see. We also have behavior referrals, and depending on the strategy and the pathway, it may be behavior referrals. I know we're talking suspensions. We also have, we've talked about from time to time what we call POP classroom behavior notes. Those are like those minor behaviors where students are staying in the classroom. But it may be we want to see fewer of those as well. So it kind of can depend on that. When the schools did their SIP retreat in June, it was going to the past year, they looked at what their goals were and they collected the additional evidence and put it in last year's school improvement plan. And then next week, they're meeting for this year's school improvement plan, which is when they'll lay it out. But all of those steps would have what will we see and what will those outcomes be.
Great, thank you. That helps clarify. And then, we've heard a lot about like the root causes. Are there some things that we're seeing at the district level or at the school level that kind of like rise to the top? Are there some issues that we find in common, high school, middle school, elementary school, or district-wide?
Director Leonard, members of the committee, John Jagman. So it does vary by school, and I know we're going to hear that a lot here, but the root cause can vary. Sometimes it is there's a teacher turnover and there's a new teacher in the classroom with a certain grade level. Sometimes it could be there's a grade level that has more students. The high schools, like I shared, when the students share, they are sharing a lot of what they feel the root cause is, that lack of community, the lack of the engagement in school. So some of those schools have reflected on that and have created more clubs and committees for students. Even within the day, they have more opportunities to feel like this is the school that I'm at, I have some school pride. And then the other kind of root cause we're looking at is connecting to what, like I said, we call those the five components of school climate, and those are, we talk about building relationships and community, creating those expectations and procedures, teaching the skills that students need to navigate spaces, having strategies, having a classroom management plan, and then acknowledging positive student behaviors. So some of the root causes connect to that as well. There's no expectations, there's no procedures in the classroom or in the cafeteria. So it's hard to say carte blanche across 130-some schools what the root cause is, but that is also within the school improvement plan. This coming year, day one, the first thing they do is they're getting to that root cause. We don't want them walking in saying, this is the pathway I'm going to do, these are the strategies we want them to do. We want them at the school to be doing that root cause and going to, this is the pathway that's best for us to focus on. These are the activities and the things we need to engage in based on that root cause.
Thank you. I'll let my colleagues go. No. I'll let my colleagues take a turn, but I hope that during the school year we do bring schools back to kind of share with the work that they're doing at the school level, because that's always just very exciting to hear about. Thank you.
Director O'Halloran?
Thank you. And Director Simpson asked some of the questions. Most of my questions were around slide 4. Do we have any analysis around how many schools chose which focus? Like, was there one that stood out amongst the others, or kind of equally amongst the 4?
Chair Leonard, members of the committee, we could get you the exact numbers, Director O'Halloran, if you'd like to, but I do know we focused on the PBIS framework, and most did pick that. The rationale was like, if we don't have that, that's the framework that upholds mindfulness, trauma-sensitive schools, second step. So there were schools that picked those other ones, but looking at the TFI, looking at the walkthrough data, if the framework and the structure and the teaming wasn't there, they were directed into PBIS. So that was the most selected one, for sure.
May I ask another one?
Of course you can. Go for it.
So on slide 7, you have the most requested professional development topics, and I just wanted to confirm that we did develop the requested PD topics that were requested. Is that correct?
Chair Leonard, members of the committee. Yes, the majority of these already exist in some capacity. We're making sure we have better access to the schools and all of that. But yes, that's our plan going forward.
Okay. And then one more, and then I promise. So it would be nice if you could take time and present to us in September what the goals are for the data moving forward, so that we can say, yes, we met our goals, or no, we did not meet our goals, and this is what we're going to try next. So whether that's suspensions, if it's addressing 9th grade suspensions, because that's a difficult age band, or if it's, I just like to establish what the actual goals are and then talk about whether we're meeting them. So if next month's presentation could incorporate some of that, I would greatly appreciate it.
Yes, we can do that.
Director Zomber?
Thank you, Chair Leonard. So I want to echo the year-over-year data. It would be very helpful to have comparisons so that we can see change over time. And then also the 9th grade suspension as a parent of an incoming freshman, that number is really hard to look at. And I'm wondering, is there anything we're already doing targeting that particular grade level? Are there goals around it? What can we do to really work on that 9th grade suspension event?
Chair Leonard, members of the committee. So as one of the speakers said, the suspension, number of suspensions the last 2 years is about the same. Like, it's statistically the same. It's down about 50 from last year through the whole year. Looking at the grade levels, yes, 9th grade's the highest, and then we have middle school. So we are continuing to focus on Freshman Bridge as that program that all of our high schools offer, and how can we engage more and more students with that. Looking at what are the needs of those classroom teachers. So kind of in the rebranding, if that's the right term or not, but those 5 key components, that's not really a new direction. We've kind of updated the language. We are trying to make it more accessible, specifically for high school teachers and high school students, because oftentimes, I'll say PBIS was looked at as more of like an elementary, which it's not. It's research-based across all grade levels. So that's why we're rebranding it as, these are the 5 things, and which students across our district couldn't benefit from that relationship building, having procedures, having the skills that they need to navigate those procedures, having strategies, and being acknowledged for those positive decisions. So part of that is based on the feedback specifically from 9th grade teachers, 9th grade students, and the rebranding of those 5 components so it can better support those classrooms.
Do you have any other questions? Is there, Director Simpson, did you have more?
Sure. I was just wondering in terms of restorative practices. So that's one of the pathways that a school can choose to go. But in addition to that, is there any, long-term plan, like we're hoping in 3 years we can expand it to X number of schools, just because it is, a strategy that a lot of staff seem to like. It's pretty effective. Do we have a plan for expansion?
Director or Chair Leonard, members of the committee. So yeah, we have like the coaching cohort that has the coaches in it. Then there's an exploration cohort with schools that are doing, again, it's sometimes book studies, sometimes PD. Those schools will transition into receiving coaching once they meet the metric of having a number of staff trained. And it'll continue to expand. We are looking to expand it naturally, if that's the term, so we're not just dropping it into a bunch of schools based on our capacity. We can get that. I don't have their direct plan, but they do have a multi-year plan on how that is rolling out. And we can make sure that's part of our next presentation and all of that kind of stuff.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I would like to hand over the gavel.
Director Leonard?
Thank you. Most of the questions that you've asked, I have them on here. I do want to, just like for the public knowledge, just to sort of get a little bit of my experiences, especially for the last couple of years. So I take the time to go into almost all the high schools if I get a chance. I have a chance to talk with students, get their input. I've also worked with the BLMA and others at their summits and their performances and their programs to get a better understanding of where they're coming from. I like getting that direct input. I kept notes for the last couple of years on what their main issues were. So one, a big one for them was, and this is no mystery to any of us, is one, issues with our food. Okay, and I know that may seem apart from this conversation, but it's not. Okay, and we've been trying to improve that. We have made improvements in some areas, but I will stress the fact that when we sit down and talk with them, especially at the Student Summit, I heard a lot about the taste of the food or the lack of the taste of the food. So I'm just going to bring these points up. Also, they brought up the need for a more consistency with all staff members when it comes to shared leadership and those relationships that are consistent across the whole district. And I know that you're trying to make those efforts. I'm hearing it in your statements. I see it being practiced in certain buildings. But I think it's imperative that we make that really a strong push on our end, that every staff member that works in Milwaukee Public Schools has to take the time to actually build those relationships. And especially, I'm a big believer in restorative practices. I believe that those are the directions that we have to go in, and I think that that will make a very big difference in the long run. Are we going to see that next year? I don't think so. It's going to take some time to really make that happen on a more full scale, but I believe it can be done. And then also, this was brought up by a number of students, and I'm going to actually throw a question at you, Mr. Boswell, in a second from this. So a lot of our students have spoken with regards to these different programs and different classrooms that I've been into, and et cetera, all of that, have said that they're less concerned about behaviors that may be a little bit disruptive or not that big of a deal, but they do believe that there is a small percentage of students that at times, especially in buildings where things are not going well, they have a tendency to start taking over either classrooms or buildings and making it difficult for all the other students. They want more control and leadership from us. I guess that'd be the best way to say it. And they bring that out to me very clearly in these conversations. I don't think this is any real big mystery. And Mr. Boswell, I asked for this before. We have not had a chance because of so many changes to our schedule. And I know that you have already said that you're going to put something together. But I think it's important for the public to see not a wholesale level of suspensions, but to take a look at the number of students by student and their suspension levels. We have a tendency to compare things, thinking that we have a building with, and I'm going to have to give an example of one building, Hamilton High School, and in the last 2 years, they have shown me their suspension rates and the number of students that get the most suspensions. When you take that 5-6% that are causing the most challenges for us, that significantly drops their suspension rate in that building. And I think it's important that we get clarity on this so that everybody understands exactly what we're really dealing with and where those interventions have to be placed for those students. So, Mr. Boswell, I'm sort of putting you on the spot here. I've done this before, but I'm hoping that you can get this to us and then asking you when that is possible.
Mr. Boswell?
Chair Leonard, members of the committee, Matthew Boswell, Senior Director of the Department of Student Services. Yes, Chair Leonard, we have spoken at length in terms of that alignment, and I'll be more than happy to get that information to you in terms of the breakdown of the data. In reference to the conversation about protection of health and safety of students and staff, we have talked about that as well. It has been a concentrated effort of our principals and our administrators to do just that as we continue to research best interventional practices for our district as a whole. So we've talked about several different programs. We are in research mode in reference to that to be able to address those students that may present some issues in terms of protection and health of students and staff. But I definitely want to take this opportunity as well to really praise our principals in terms of stretching the strategies that they have used in terms of protection of health and safety of our students and staff. And we will continue to employ best practices in that area and look forward to getting Chair Leonard the information and searching for other alternatives to address that need.
Any follow-up, Director Leonard?
Just one more. This is apart from this subject. I just want to speak to this. We had talked about it at a previous meeting. Next month, I've been working actually for over about 3 years with the community outreach group and our DAC, which has really a large number of our parents that are in our district, parent coordinators, et cetera. And they will be presenting something next month on a type of a meeting after the meeting. Okay, so we want to create a type of roundtable. It will not be after every PACE meeting, but our PACE meetings are relatively short. This will be an opportunity for us to actually have people come in, give input. This would be more a situation that would by no means be parliamentary. It would be a situation where people can ask questions. We will keep the agenda items contained. I don't want to get into the discussions on every topic. But I definitely want to open this up to the public and the community members so that we can actually sit down and have actual discussions without any kind of voting or anything like that. So just keep that in mind. I don't want to mess up that presentation. They're way better at it than I am. So I'm going to leave that up to them for next month, but I want to sort of give you a heads up on that and hope to see many of you at least at that first meeting. Thank you.
Director Leonard, would you like the gavel back?
I will take the gavel back. Are there any other, oh, go ahead, Mr. Chason, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Chair Leonard. Matt Chason, Office of Accountability and Efficiency. I just had a question as it relates to how the goals that are set for the disciplinary disproportionality and the reduction thereof in the school improvement plans. Do schools set their own goals in those plans, or are they basically instructed to meet and set a goal that has been set by the district overall?
Chair Leonard, members of the committee. So the disproportionality goal is at the district level. I know I've mentioned this before, but due to the hypersegregation in the city of Milwaukee, many of our schools, the disproportionality doesn't show up. So we did want to highlight again, we have seen movement in that. Our disproportionality last year went down. 78% of our suspensions were for black students. That is still a level that is much higher than we would like, but that is down 2%, and it was at 80% for multiple years. And sometimes movement, the first step, is the hardest, so we want to continue that for sure. But I want to highlight, like, it has started moving. It has not moved enough. We all acknowledge that. But we did see some movement in that. So the disproportionality is always at the district level. That is not in the school improvement plan. In the school improvement plan, schools do have a goal focusing specifically on lowering their suspensions for students. And that is right within there. And then so if a student, regardless of their population and their enrollment by race, if we are lowering it in the schools, we will then at the back end, at the district level, see it lower. So schools do have that in their school improvement plan. It's just to lower, but then the disproportionality is at the district level.
Mr. Chason, any more questions? Nope. No one has any more questions? Comments? Very good. Madam Secretary, next item, please.
Mr. Chair, that was the last item on this meeting's agenda.
Okay, there being no more further business before the committee, this meeting is adjourned, and thank you, everyone, for your comments.